Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, we're riding solo. It's a recap of all things 2024. Talk health, fitness, personal development, money, career, friends, relationship, the works. What worked, what didn't. 2024, here's a recap. Now, guys, before we start this week's episode of the podcast, I want to talk to you about the Life by Design Mastermind. The Life by Design Mastermind is the mastermind for go-getters and high achievers who are looking to create a more successful, fulfilling, and balanced life by design. If you're serious about transforming your life, achieving your goals, and living a life on your terms, then the Life by Design is your golden ticket. Head over to the show notes and click on the link for more details about the program. What is up? Hope you are very well. Here with the solo episode today. Haven't done one for a while, but kind of excited for it. So we are very close to wrapping up 2024. People, it's been good. Some people, it's been not so real ugly. So I'm just going to go through a little recap of the year that has been, and also potentially over the coming weeks, talk through how I prep for the year to come. For me, the last 5 years have easily been the best 5 years of my life, and there's a number of little things that I've done and do that have all helped play that role. So it starts with the 6Ps. You may have heard me talk about it, you may have not, but the 6Ps are a really big, I guess, framework that I think about my life through. And the 6Ps came together off the back of my own personal experience mixed with science and research as to what makes a good life. So I spent a good portion of the last 5 years kind of looking at all people's different theories and, you know, the life wheels and all of those things, and cultivated and created my 6Ps, which really are the catalyst for creating a good life. So I'm going to run through the 6Ps, what worked for me this year and what didn't, starting with performance. So for those that don't know, performance tends to be all things kind of health and fitness. In terms of the challenge from this year for all things health and fitness, it was definitely my injuries, and in particular my shoulder injury, which up until this point, I still haven't got to the bottom of it. It's been about 2 years and it hasn't necessarily got worse, but it also just hasn't necessarily got better. There's a few things that I struggle with when it comes to my own kind of mental well-being. One is the weather, of which we're very lucky in Byron Bay. 2 is if I feel really stagnant in my life. And 3 is when I'm injured. And this injury hasn't put me out in any way. I haven't been able to do everything that I want to. So that just continues to niggle, and it's a subtle enough niggle that I can get on with my life, but it's also a subtle enough niggle that it just lingers. So that would be the biggest challenge by a long way from a health and fitness point of view. Wins this year, a few physical feats, kind of different to what I've done previously. So for those that are new listeners, Ironman, half Ironman were kind of my jam for a few years there. And I stepped away from it this year, and I'm very happy with my decision. If you've ever trained for a half or a full, you know the work that is required. It's a huge amount, and I haven't really missed it. So the wins this year, 2 high roxes. Now I'm saying 2, even though I'm recording this before my second. So hopefully something doesn't go real pear-shaped, but I'm going to assume that everything will go really well. And the 2 high roxes. At this stage, high rocks feels like my jam for the near future. I'm already kind of looking at March 2025 in Brisbane as my next one, and I've just really enjoyed them. To be fair, where I'm training, I love it. It isn't that specific to high rocks, so I've been pretty happy with the outcomes so far from a high rocks point of view, especially when the crossover train isn't quite there. And what I mean by that is where I train tend to be very separate from, you know, kind of strength training and like aerobic or anaerobic training. The problem with that, when you try to cross over to high rocks is very good at combining both. So you'll go for a run and then you'll come back and do, 80 meters of lunges. So that specific training hasn't necessarily worked for me this year. Don't know what I'm going to do next year about that, but I'll deal with that next year. So high roxes would be the Gold Coast Half Marathon. Even though I've done a lot of long distances and long events, 50K adventure races, a 42K run at the back end of an Ironman, I hadn't officially ticked the half marathon box. So that was good to tick, and to also feel really good in doing that, which I won't go too much into detail now. It's not necessary, but I have previously had this pattern of getting some kind of self-sabotaging injury the week of an event. It's never fully stopped me, but all this random shit comes up, which is a topic for another time. But it was really interesting. I took a different approach going into Gold Coast and just really took the pressure off. And it worked in my favor big time. I ended up running about 10 seconds faster per kilometer, which is pretty significant. Also 21, and that felt really good. Would be body composition, which I this year kind of ticked a goal that I set out last year. I jumped on a DEXA scan last year. I think it was about November last year. I was with Genoa, and I was blown away by what my body fat was. Genoa had a good chuckle because that's what good mates do. But also, like, I hit it pretty well. I was sitting at 23%. And numbers, like, I'm a 40-year-old man, like whether I'm 10%, 20%, it doesn't change my life. But when I got on at 23, I was like, fuck. So over the course of this last 12 months, I've been able to knock off 10%, which is significant in a year, and especially for someone who doesn't carry a huge amount of like weight, so to speak. So that's been good to get myself in the best nick of probably the last 10 years. I think it was probably 30 that I was last sitting at around that kind of 12%. And again, 12%, 10%, 8% doesn't really change anything in my life, but I really enjoy having a goal and seeing who I need to become in that process. So the body composition will be another goal going into next year. I'm getting it down to 8%, which from 23, 13, not too hard. From 13 down to 8, it becomes a slightly different story. So that'll be a good challenge to be extra dialed in and see what kind of works and what doesn't. So that is all things performance. Next up is passions. So passions tends to be kind of your personal development, anything that's related to kind of spirituality, your own hobbies, things you do for fun, activities, and potentially other values that sit outside the 6Ps. So for me, passions generally is quite big from a self-development point of view. And interestingly, this year has been the least personal development I've done in, I'd almost say 2 decades. And after the last 4 years of a lot, it was really interesting. Shani actually said to me last week or the week before, she's like, I think this year's been your biggest year of growth. And for me to compartmentalize that and make sense of it was really challenging, because naturally for me as someone in the growth, personal development, coaching space, growth is a byproduct of the work that you do. And I haven't done a huge amount of work this year, but it was really interesting to hear that from her side of things, because I think where she got to is that it's been a real grounding and embodiment and integrity of the last 4 years of learning and growing everything. It's really kind of landed this year. So that's cool to get that feedback, because I definitely wouldn't have seen it through those lenses had Shani not brought that to my attention. So that would be, I don't know if it's a challenge, but I just didn't feel interested in it much of this year. So I didn't even do a huge amount of reading, which again is quite big for me. The win of over the course of 2024 would probably be the IFS work I did, internal family systems. I have a friend, former client, who is big in this space. She's gone on to become a practitioner. And spending 12 weeks with her was really interesting. It's an approach that I've heard good things of over the last few years, but I hadn't experienced it firsthand. And I feel very fortunate to have experienced a lot of different modalities in my time and continue to kind of open myself up to new ones. And IFS is as insightful and powerful as any. So that was really cool to work with her on all things IFS, internal family systems. Next up, the third P. So we've had performance, passions, and profits. Profit-wise, the biggest challenge was, or is, that I still continue to see a number of like money behaviors, challenges, pieces that haven't really landed for me, and I haven't got to the bottom of it. One that kind of landed in more recent times is really having a deep understanding of your attachment style and how that shows up in your money. I'd heard about this years ago, but it just, for whatever reason, it just landed differently this time. So that's really at the forefront of my mind, knowing that my anxious, avoidant attachment style shows up in money, and it will be a big focus of mine next year. And there's a number of reasons a big focus, but at the top of that pile is I've been in a fortunate position where I've been able to earn sloppy money behavior. And the moment that Shani and I found out that we were pregnant, or Shani's pregnant, I don't even know the right language. I can't keep out earning these poor behaviors, because now someone else's livelihood counts on it. I'm accountable for someone else's livelihood. So that it's always been something that has been in my mind, but there's always been other things that pop up, and I'll kind of get to that. But that is really like staring me in the face to get to the bottom of it. So I'm interested and excited to see what comes to light in that space in 2025. The win from a profits point of view was that I've managed to double my income since the start of this year. So it's really interesting. I'll go into win in purpose, but essentially I've been able to double my income since January. So January's income compared to November's, and probably do 1/3 of the work that I did over the past few years. At one point I was running 3 programs at the same time, and it was just like unbelievable the amount of stuff that was happening. So that's been good, and it's felt easier this year to do 1/3 of the work and essentially double my income from January. So that is profits. Tick purpose. Sorry, tick performance, passions, profits. Next up is purpose, which is all things kind of work, career, business related. The biggest challenge for the purpose section was I don't feel like I ever really quite hit the spot when it comes to Life by Design this year. I was really excited about it as a mastermind, and very grateful for the people that have come into my world through Life by Design, like some really cool people that I've been able to work with. It just kind of, there was a lot of uncertainty as to what Life by Design actually was and who I was talking to. And it's really interesting because at the start of the year, or even the back end of last year, I spent a lot of time on this specific avatar, this person. And there's a lot of people that have read my avatar document because I give it to them as a template, and they're like, dude, this is fucking unbelievable. Like the amount of thought that I put into my avatar is unbelievable. And yet I didn't really speak to them directly this year through the Life by Design program. So there's always a bit of a disconnect, and it is exciting to think of what's possible next year, knowing that my new offering, the inner circle, is very much aligned, knowing that the avatar will be spoken to more. So it'd be cool to kind of see what comes to fruition as a result of that. From a win point of view, there's a new level of flow for me, which is something that I don't need to change at all next year when we have a kid. I say that now, things might change a little bit, but I've had this in the back of my mind for kind of 12 to 18 months of like, okay, how do we set something up that allows a lot of freedom and flexibility to play the role that I want to, as a father and a hands-on father. I don't want to just kind of be making up the numbers like a lot of people do, but also like having the freedom and flexibility to be able to kind of free Shani up a bit if she wants to do some work and stuff like that as well. So there's a lot of space, a lot of white space that I get to choose how I feel in my diary and in my perfect week. And it's really cool to think that like, one of the things I talk about with a lot of clients is like, what's your tweak of the week? Like, what do you want to shift this week? What's the small thing that you want to shift? I'd struggle to tweak my week at all. And that's been the case for probably the last 6 months. So it's all really set the way I want it. And it feels good to be able to roll into a new year with a baby on the way and just go, well, it's pretty good. I've got a lot of flexibility, and the earning potential is still kind of pretty impressive as well. So that would be my win. Challenge. So onto people now. The biggest challenge definitely is that I just didn't have enough bro time this year. One of the upsides to momentum and living with Genoa previously was there was plenty of like just time with the fellas. And this year I really missed it. Like, and I'll go into kind of the win in a sec. Like we have probably between Shani and I, the best friends from a like couples point of view. Like we've always got couples that we're hanging out with and love them so dearly. And it wasn't until late in the year that I was like, what's missing? Because we spend we realized this year really make sense of it. I was like, well, we see couples, I see blokes, I see girls. And then I was like, it's because I'm not spending enough time with blokes individually. So there's already a couple of like tweaks in place for next year from that side of things, just to get more bro time. But yeah, I really did miss it this year. And, it was part of the reason I shift the business model to inner circle for next year is because I wanted to spend some more time with, really kind of driven, inspiring, motivated blokes, and also mindful that there's going to be a lot of girl energy in my house next year between Shani and our daughter, and the mums and the girlfriends and everything that kind of come through the house. So it's super important for me to double down on some bloke time, which will be good. The win is definitely just an epic year of really amazing people, and it's wild what can happen in the space of a year. Like a lot of Shani and our closest friends now, some of them we didn't even know a year ago, but some of them we kind of knew of them, but we just hadn't grown close to them. So it's wild to think what happens in a year And even for me, one of my favorite wins this year has just been seeing Shani, calling some new girlfriends that are just fucking epic. There were she 2 years ago. I did a lot of work around connection. I literally spent the whole year of 2022 on connection, and Shani did a lot of work last year around it. And there was just some friendships last year that were like hard work, really hard work. And Shani knew how I felt about those friendships, and she kind of pushed a little bit longer than, I think she probably should have, to keep them alive, to try to kind of reorchestrate them. I was just like, babe, I'm just not sure if they're worth it. Anyway, it landed this year and she realized that they probably weren't. And by letting go of those, it just freed up a lot of her headspace, and also meant that she could call in these other women who it's just clean, it's easy, and there's just such a beautiful energy, essence, and love about, a few of these girls that she's called in. So, overall, it's probably one of the biggest wins this year. It's just seeing Shani's friendships. And, I've written a few of these girls a message just to kind of thank them for showing up the way they have in our world, and obviously more so in Shani's world. And yeah, just grateful for them. And the final P being partner. So the biggest challenge for us this year was definitely, we just went through this like stagnant, irritable phase. And interestingly, we've been through a phase like that the last couple of years. Last year we probably went through it for like 6 months. And, I don't know if you've experienced this. It's not big enough where it's an issue, like a big issue worth blowing up, but it's small enough that it's just like, it's like the fucking little pebble that just is in your shoe. And for the first 6 months of last year, it was niggling. And then it was probably like a 3-month period this year where it's just this little stagnant patch. And interestingly, it's needed me to go and do an MDMA therapy session. Well, I did it on my own this year. Shani and I did it together last year to shift that up. And instantly, like, we had a monster week of friction after the journey this year. Like, I just had a lot of anger, which was suppressed, but just kind of came out in really dysfunctional ways the week after my MDMA journey this year. And then last year, we just had the most amazing clearing of stuff that was lingering. So that has helped, just kind of shift when talking won't do the work. And then finally, the win of this year. There's obviously been pregnancies, there's been proposals, which are all amazing and significant. There's not too many life events that you get to have each, in a lifetime. So those are the obvious wins. But what is a bigger win for me is just the way that we've navigated the first 20 weeks of Shani's pregnancy. By the time this comes out, it'll be about 23 weeks. And I think because I came from a very dysfunctional home, I've always had in the back of my mind the importance of just having a really steady home environment. And, previous to kind of 5 years ago, my dysfunctional home life filtered through into my everyday life. And at the age of 35, when I left Sydney, I was like, I've got to sort this shit out. Like, I just had ups and downs in every area of my life. I think the only thing that I've ever felt was consistent was my exercise. Nutrition, finances, friends, business, everything kind of had its ups and downs. And I used to think to myself, and I don't even know if I've said this out loud before, but I used to think to myself, I don't think I called it like a circus like I do now, but I used to kind of up and down. Imagine adding kids to this. And it gave me so much anxiety looking at my life, looking at the ups and downs and going, fuck, I've got to bring a kid into this at some stage. But now I look at, the last 20 weeks in particular and just how settled everything is. And knowing that, the baby that Shani's carrying, our little girl, is picking up everything that we're putting down. And I look at that and go, like, we're off to a good start. 20 weeks, 23 by the time this episode comes out. We're setting our nervous system up well, where, like, there's a lot of things that we're doing well before even having her. And I just know the impact and long-term implications of having a really unsettled home or having a dysfunctional upbringing. And it just makes everyone's life harder. Like, we can do so much in the first 7 years to set her up really well, and so that she doesn't have to do, the amount of work that I've done to undo all the learnings. So that would be my win. And hopefully over the next 20 weeks, we maintain that. You know, we do live a very settled life these days. There's not much drama. Shani's excellent as a female, not bringing fucking drama into the home. And some of those friendships that were causing drama have gone. It's just a really peaceful environment. And I think, you know, I'll probably be even more protective of our home environment, you know, when she's born. But I'm really mindful of who's in our space, what energy they're bringing. And I just don't have a huge amount of tolerance for drama, especially around, you know, a little girl who we're looking to regulate, co-regulate, and just have a very steady start to life. So gang, that's my 6 Ps. That's my win challenge. Overall, it's been a really good year. I did a podcast a few weeks ago with Shani around, we're talking about wins and challenges in life. And this year, you know, knock on wood, has probably been, you know, the last 5 years have easily been the best 5 years of my life by a long way. But I think this year I've probably experienced fewer challenges than any other year. Like I really had to stretch to find some challenges. And that's just this year. Trust me, there's way more where that came from, and there's going to be more to come over the years. But it's been a really smooth year, and who knows what we're in store for next year. But yeah, I mean, the long game has paid off so far, you know, in terms of when I left Sydney and every area was cooked. I put a shitload of work into getting to this place of a really steady life to then just lay the foundations for what is to come. So that's my 6 Ps. That's my win challenge. That's a little insight into 2024. And we'll be back with a whole lot more in 2025.